So I don't know if I've explained this before, but having to do with, in one of the videos I went through the steps of how I calculated things for trends, tracking trends for the Value of Ideas project, and how I equated. I went through a bunch of different steps, and within each of those steps, like 20 steps. So unless you're familiar with the concept or the equations, or just good at math in general, which I'm not, so I'm very surprised that I came to these conclusions that turned out to be pretty accurate in the way that I wish I had my notes with me right now because I'm trying to drive, but it really did come down to scale and how to measure anything. I figured that the main three things that would be important would be the pace at which a trend or shift in social structures, phases, alchemical cycle, classic cycle happened, and so and the driving force, the time, and all of that equated to how you would calculate velocity and electromagnetic frequency and wave lengths, and I combined equations and included the Planck equation, and basically, like, what I did was try to find areas of overlap where the subject material or matter might be different, but their fundamental I guess properties or ways of functioning are the same. So within Planck's equation that was combined within all of this, that I believe they used to calculate a new scale for the metric system, is what I've been talking about. But within Planck's equation is the Planck's constant, and what else, there's nothing else but change that's constant. And so the Planck constant came to represent the entire alchemical cycle. I transferred numbers and things like that, and then times that by whatever phase or stage the trend was that I was documenting or tracking, if that makes sense, so that you got a new form, basically just giving things new meaning where they were applicable. So, and then further, I don't remember exactly the order of things. This was like 2 years ago, and I believe there was 11 steps to getting the right number for where people were in or the trends, the things that I was picking up on, and how to really document that, and how to it's all compare and contrast. It's all finding the underlining said it like a clothing lining, overlaps. I wish I had, again, I don't know if I'm completely making sense, but so then within that, so you got that like main constant number, and then you had to also find from that the velocity, how fast it was picked up on, what areas and things like that, and I just don't remember exactly how I equated everything right now. Literally have not looked at my notes in like 2 years, and I'm surprised I came to those conclusions, but it really stemmed from knowing a lot about having studied fashion and fashion design, and anyone who's done that or has taken like textiles or anything like along those lines, production wise, knowing that with anything, especially anything that is constant or continual carryover trim or type of fabric or whatever it is, there has to be, especially in production, when you're sending all these things to all your sample requests and tech packs and all that. Might not be good at technology, but I can make you a fantastic tech pack and tech drawing and Illustrator and Photoshop and stuff like that. But yeah, that's like the extent of what we really had to know for fashion. But regardless, anyone who would know anything about would know that you need a standard, something to compare all incoming samples or color dye dips to make sure that you are using the right color or the right trim or whatever, a standard. And I mean, it was a double play also with the alchemical cycle, which going through the phases to get to the the end phase in alchemical mythology, it's like to turn stone or to gold. And so the only obviously I didn't know how much like certain things would cost to produce, or the different net income or whatever they got from those specific, like how you would at all like know that information in order to input it and to know some like true real facts about how the cost versus how trendy it was and all that, how much sales, and that gets into sales, but and so incorporated some of those kinds of statistic type things too. But mainly the only thing that is the connecting factor is that idea of transformation of basic idea, the beginning stages of a trend, the initial inspiration, the very beginning of when and in fashion it kind of equates to couture, because that's where everything trickles down from, to then down to, for those that aren't in fashion that don't know, but then trickle down to ready to wear, which is what you mainly see on the runways. That happens, well, now like seems like all the time, but it used to be like twice a year, 2 times. And then to like bridge lines and it just different demographics, but then to mass, department stores, and then to all those, the entire trickle down effect. But it starts with the couture, because that's where people are the most imaginative and the most avant-garde and nuanced, and creating the original sort of maybe perhaps new trend or something that is then going to be dissected and applied in different ways in all these different designer collections, just as it trickles down. And so from that initial kind of starting point and how it goes through stages, and not that it's like because it would be the opposite, I guess, for fashion, like haute couture, and going trickle down, so initial idea to when it's widely accepted and in use, so it's kind of opposite. Maybe that's why it worked for me, since everything seems to be like upside down for me. But to track those, when you notice that, and it all has to do with how many of the examples of the trends and the different stages and phases that I was able to find or came across, and the amount of those, also then having to do something with how many people are picking up on a certain idea, that starting point, and carrying it over into different areas and different fields. And through those shifts, to eventually and it plays into the whole idea of art, of initial idea and creation, and how it then, that one spark in God's, oh my God, sir, mind, how it then infiltrates, and he she eventually disappears into their creation when it becomes that mass. It is the world, everything is a reflection, everything is everything kind of stage. So all these different scales of evaluating where things are at, and translating that to the alchemical cycle, and based on that, the equation, the constant, the how fast this one specific constant was changing. I mean, there's just a lot of different ways that I went into it, so I hope this kind of makes sense to grasp the idea of how I went about evaluating these shifts in culture, in trends, in fashion, and ideologies, and what's popular, people are talking about, and how to anticipate that, knowing where you are and how organically things develop and translate and transform into the next more developed level or stage. So knowing where you are, where you've been, and knowing these stages can help one anticipate where things, the market, trends, what people are going, what's going to be popular, all of that, and what's going to be on people's minds, what people are going to be drawn towards in the near future. And so even though we don't really measure things in gold, that really was the only sort of way to sort of make up or assess some sort of idea of the numbers for each trend and campaign and different things I saw in the media, and what those would, because it's not really about the money per se, the actual monetary. If you wanted to carry this idea forward, you would probably have to have all that information and have it in actual monetary forms that make sense. But just translating it to gold is, to my best of my knowledge, how that works, and based on that, having that be an indication of what also, as kind of in a way to back it up also, just depending on which route you take to look at this information, being an indication of what phase or stage that particular company or that particular trend or that particular item, idea, phase is at, in the cycle. And towards this point where something, whether you think it's a great thing or not, it goes down to that fundamental idea that a good idea is going to disperse and circulate and become all-encompassing and a part of everything. And so whether you love, mass market apparel or don't, or and again, it doesn't have to just do with apparel, but or design, because I really did take into account what was going on in all forms of media, editorials, and what was being seen on the news. But again, I'm just like one person, so I did my best to get a well-rounded bit of information to track, and then also compare to where the astrological stars and signs and emotions and moods and things were at, and so that you kind of start to get an idea of what type of idea, what type of initial spark, what type of what elements were part of that initial spark that then infiltrated everything and became a trend, or became a way of thinking, or something that had infiltrated and become part of everyone's daily speech or mass culture kind of thing. So, and yeah, and that goes just back to the idea of, because that's just how things are. I mean, we go in cycles, but it builds also. So momentum, force, velocity, and eventually that layering of duplication or multiplicity, and overlaps, and all of it, you can just see how everything just builds upon itself in these same cycles, that once you're familiar with them, it becomes all the more obvious how these things expect. So I'm not claiming to know everything about. I need to go back and review those things too. I haven't looked at it in a while and don't remember all the visuals and whatnot, but it's really interesting, and it just seems that like when there's a lot of chaos going on, it's a symptom of people just feeling out of control, not really knowing where they're headed, what they're doing, what's going on around them, and how to react. And I think introducing these simple structures that can be translated in so many different ways that everyone can kind of sort of relate to or put in their own context and understand how it applies to them. But then also seeing the overlaps, or the understanding how it relates to them, I think helps to us, to everyone, to yourself, helps you understand how to relate to others, because you have that common ground that is, you don't have to even really look for it when you're just understanding that when everyone is just sort of on the same page. But that is a long off ideal of society having kind of this base structure of taught maybe in school, but that starting to sound a little, I don't know, dictatorship. Anyways, so there was a lot that went into that, and I just wanted to kind of let you understand how I incorporated Planck's constant and other equations and names I'm blanking on right now. I have so many ideas going on in your head. You're just kind of like, all of a sudden you just short circuit, and I can't remember anything. But it was that one video where I had my black and white shirt on. I'll put the link maybe below this video if I can get this to upload. And but it's just interesting. And so then that was the good thing about the Picasso system, because it allowed you to put in all those different factors and elements and equations and results and different everything, but also see it and see what each one of those dots represent. Everything from a music note to a DNA base pair to a mood to a point in the sky to a trend to a shift in culture to a what have I covered? I don't know, but even down to like the elements, fire, wind, and the moods then associated with them. And I think each dot should give an overall picture of what that energy is, that is the driving force behind something that day for people, that is kind of manifest in different ways, but you can probably see it if you're looking for it, and gives you a better idea of like how to interpret and react and take something in, and really hope I'm going the right way, and please don't hit me. Okay. And so yeah, I just think it's amazing actually, because I really, I was never great at math, and not to say that my numbers are probably, doing everything sort of analog, and you try your best, but I'm not sure if everything, is completely perfect or right. I definitely would have someone better in math look over all of that if it was important to do so, but I was never, and I know I must have had help from somewhere else, universe, because everything sort of just started to come to me and make sense. And of course I had done my research, but I wasn't sure how to put it all together, and how everything could relate and in what order to do things. And that's what it comes down to for me, at least. Learning methods, and all of it is step by step. Otherwise I'm just like, what's there to say that this can go here, this number, this equation, part of the equation can go there, like, what are the, whatever. So yeah, but if you read the Time article that has to do with how the metric system has been understand how it works with what I've done within the data plays. And then, you know, of course, since it's in tune and rhythm to everything has a underlying ratio, a way of relating. It's in rhythm, and then I use my own sense of cut and paste and rhythm and video making and order and just how things look to go together and color-wise, because you didn't get the choice of colors in Picasso, really. The Picasso data platform, and you would need to be able to call numbers out further in order to get more specific, in order to turn this into like a language translation based on cued speech. But yes, in cued speech, all the hand shapes and all that are included, and so each dot represents language, everything, and it's just fascinating to me how they could all relate, from all these huge ideas, concepts, to the smallest thing like a DNA base pair, and then come together in these interesting patterns, because it's, you know, associated, also compared to the constellations, and all the different patterns they make up, and the rhythm and all of that I think works pretty well and goes with most songs. And then, you know, is also meditative, visual learning, and if you could take it further, could then also, yeah, be a way of letting the deaf, hard of hearing, see music, see language through shifting dots, kind of like binary code, and just different layouts. And then again, all of those dots correspond to the different finger positions on the violin, and the different strings, and the different hand positions with cued speech. And so violin becomes has the same expression as a hand motion, like a stroke bow length on the violin has the same visual expression as a hand motion that is interpreting English, you know, to cued speech, so that someone that is deaf can read their lips and see the combination of the phonetics and the hand movement, and know what they're saying. That's the basis of cued speech. And so basically everything is distilled down to what is its sort of base expression in a way that relates to everything else. And so that playing a note on the violin is like saying a consonant or a vowel that is the same as moving your hand a certain way with a certain finger position, and that is also the same as a degree in the sky and a note on page. And so if you could distill it down even further, do further call outs, you could probably turn this into a really cool way of visual language translation. There was one other thing that I just thought that was interesting, but yeah, I mean, it just all sort of translated in my own context massively, the amount of people that have taken this on, and how, I guess, like density in a sense, how dense the trend, and I'm just going in circles, I think, talking about this, but yeah, it was, this whole thing, in fact, is all about scale and weight, not in like a, I don't know, like in some sort of, I don't mean that in some sort of, I think I went too far in trying to find Barnes & Noble, but not in some like weird, strange way, but it's the ability to see everything in a scale from small to large that helps us to see the big picture and the details and pull it all together in some new understanding, to see things from different perspective and enlighten ourselves. And so yeah, then the meditative data plays that can be put to any music, and it's meant to help the deaf. And where did she? Oh my god, I don't have a stop sign. But yeah, there's just a million different uses and different ways of, I mean, I've used those plays to explain the different dimensions, and to represent the starry night sky, and because it is, each dot represents every one of those things on one level. So we're just seeing it all pulled together in one dot, and you're able to then scale in and scale out, and in your mind, and understand how something can relate from small to large, dimension-wise, and even within, you know, and within culture and society. And so teaching us thus to relate better to each other and be more open-minded and create space for new ideas and new solutions to come to us. So I hope that makes sense. And if I think of anything else, because I think there was something else and I can't turn here, I will, what else? There was one other thing, but I'm going to end this here and upload it. So I'll probably have to put it below if I think of it in the details. So yeah, and then I also made one huge playlist for this week that is going to be reshuffled and remixed for each day. Pull out what's really important, which again is within that process of distillation and recombinations and recombining of elements. I wanted to do no, actually I did do an elemental one with all the periodic numbers and their names, and interesting the patterns that they made up, you know, to see it, to actually see how I don't know how to explain. So anyways, I'll just end this here, and I hope that makes sense, and feedback's always great. And check out that Time article, I'll put that below as well, so you can see how this then translated by people that know probably a lot more than me in this field into real life, that has helped, and a major milestone apparently. And yeah, it's just really cool. So thanks for listening, and have a great day. Bye.